Checkup. Our question today, how are you coping with the weather this winter? We're focusing on the blizzard and the state of emergency in Newfoundland right now, so we'd especially like to hear from folks in that province to hear how you're faring. Give us a call. The number again, 1-888-416-8333. I'm Duncan McHugh on CBC Radio 1 and online at cbc.ca. You're listening to a special Saturday edition of Country Checkup.
It's not a common sound in Vancouver. And today it's a sound that signifies a city shut down.
Albertans are bracing against a work week of extreme weather.
Temperatures were so frigid in Edmonton this morning, a rail line on the city's LRT system cracked.
TransCanada hit with whiteout conditions. Parts of the highway shut down entirely through the Fraser Valley this morning.
We are going to start in Newfoundland with 76 centimeters of snow on the ground in St. John's. It'll be days of digging out of this one, which means quite a lot of work for our next guest. Brian Murphy and his brothers own a snow clearing company just outside of St. John's. We reached him in his snowplow right now in Mount Pearl, Newfoundland. Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Brian?
Lots of snow out our way.
Lots of snow. That's a bit of an understatement. What's your morning been like?
It's been pretty busy. Large drifts. A lot of the roads haven't been plowed. Council has been doing what they can, but there's a huge amount of snow after falling, and it's very time consuming to get a pushback.
Brian, you do this for a living, but tell us what was it like yesterday as the snow started to come in. Describe for us trying to move that around.
Well, yesterday morning, as it came in, it wasn't. It was pretty much the same as every other storm. But as the day progressed, the wind got a lot higher, and well, by noon yesterday, it was pretty much violent. The wind was so hard that the snow would hit you in the face, and it was painful. I tell you, it was quite the storm we had.
And then I've been seeing some of the pictures. I mean, snow that is covering the cars, literally. There wasn't anyone on the streets in St. John's anyway yesterday. So what's it like for someone who's running the snow plows, trying to make it safe for people to get out on the roads again?
For every car that you have left, left in the way, it causes you a good bit of time to try to clean up around it. So it slows down the process quite a bit by having your cars left in the way, I would say.
Now, you've been going all night, I imagine?
Yeah, since 3 this morning.
And then how long do you think it's going to take to clean? It looks like people are starting to dig out now, but there are still people out and about in snowshoes, and are streets passable in parts of the city?
Most of the main drags are getting to be passable now pretty good, and they're starting on the side streets. So I'm thinking a day or two, and it'll be pretty much back to normal. Now, there's going to be quite a bit of blowback and trucking after the fact, but just to get everything open, I'm thinking maybe a day or two, it should be fine.
Yeah. Do you have any? And there are still people we understand that are stuck in their houses. Do you have any tips for folks who are still snowed in?
Really, right now, the best place for you to be is in your house until the streets are at a safe level. You can clean up in around your house, make sure all your vents are open and your doors and windows. And other than that, just bunker down and enjoy your day off.
Last question, Brian. I'm looking at the measurements here. St. John's International Airport, 76 centimeters of snow last night. That broke the record, just broke it right open. There was 69 centimeters back in 99. Have you ever seen anything like this, this much snow in one day?
I heard on the radio this morning that Mount Pearl, Dunham's Industrial Park, got 93 centimeters of snow. I'm not quite sure if that was if that's correct or not, but that's what I heard, and that's more believable because this is probably the biggest storm that I've seen in my 35 years at it.
Brian, good luck and good luck with your machine as well. I bet it's going to be working overtime.
Yeah, I bet. Hey, bye.
Brian Murphy owns a snow clearing company with his brothers just outside of St. John's. Our question today, how are you coping with the weather this winter? You're listening to Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio 1 and on Sirius XM Satellite Radio Channel 169. I'm Duncan McHugh. Call us at 1-888-416-8333, or you can email checkup@cbc.ca or join the conversation on social media. You can chat in real time on our Facebook live stream or share your thoughts on Twitter @CheckupCBC. We'll be reading your comments throughout today's show. Several municipalities, including the city of St. John's, remain under a state of emergency. As you just heard, plows have begun clearing the streets, but roads and businesses are closed. Though blizzard warnings have ended in the region, thousands are still without power. Dwight Ball is the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. He's in St. John's and joins us now. Hello, Premier.
Well, how are you doing? I'm actually in Deer Lake at the 511 dispatch center. This is where many of the calls that would come in from residents across the province. But, you're right. As when we looked at this storm and the forecasting models that were coming, that was being predicted, this is indeed a storm that lived up to its billing. And, correctly said, it's some over 70 centimeters of snow at the airport. But there are communities, as we just mentioned there, at over 90 centimeters of snow. So this is quite a bit of accumulation of snowfall and a lot of windy conditions. Drifts up to 15 feet. So a lot of havoc been created in our province as a result of this storm.
Premier, you're at the spot right now where they are dealing with those emergencies calls. Tell us what you're hearing from the responders.
Well, lots of, there's certainly a lot of calls coming in. The call volume is a little less today than it was last evening, but nevertheless of a different nature. As an example, we still have around 26,000 people experiencing power outages across our province. The cleanup work is beginning on the streets and our main thoroughfares within the province, but until those routes get open, it's very difficult to get in and provide the restoration of power services that are required. And we still have, as you've mentioned already, a state of emergency that has been extended now, and there's really no date for those states of emergencies to be lifted. So where we are right now, as the nature of the calls that you just mentioned, would be around driving conditions, but primarily around seniors, many seniors in the province that are now feel like they are stuck, trapped kind of in their homes. And in case there was an emergency, looking for support, to help them get out of the situation that they're currently in with the level of snowfall that have accumulated.
Of course, first responders in the city and around the province have been going all night. What are the priorities as the storm warning has been lifted now and the cleanup begins?
Yeah, so getting those major routes opened up, and that allows us, our healthcare workers, and also the power outage, people that work on the power outages, to get them into the areas that they need to support. I get stories, and quite a few people that I know, friends of mine and neighbors of mine that are in the St. John's area, that are now telling me that they've had, people in working since 7 a.m. yesterday morning. So, people are getting tired. So we need those routes opened up so we can actually add the changeover, the turnover in our healthcare workers, law enforcers, and just people that are actually part of the cleanup work. So it's a big focus for us right now. There's been constant dialogue with our communities, and so far our communities are not asking for anything in particular, but the provincial government is there to work in lockstep and support the communities as we open up the major routes, and the communities continue to focus on the routes within their towns and cities. So it's a lot of coordination that's occurring right now, but our healthcare system, our cleanup and power outages is a big focus for us.
And of course, that's good news that you're at the moment that your first responders and your health folks are able to take care of this storm. But for those who are wondering in the province right now, do you have any indication at all when the state of emergency declarations are going to be lifted?
Well, I've been in contact, of course, with the Mayor of St. John's again today. And, typically these state of emergencies are put in place by our communities. And so with that, we're talking to our schools, our Department of Education and so on, what Monday would look like, our government buildings and so on. Because what we want to be able to do is make sure that those workers that are supplying those services, they have an opportunity that they have an opportunity to get the cleanup completed to the point where we can take that volume of traffic on the streets. But we also know that we need to get, the businesses reopened too, and that the services that we normally supply to the people in the province, that they are available to. So it's important now that we continue to meet on a regular basis and chat and communicate with our cities and our communities to make sure that, when the state of emergencies are lifted, that we are prepared to take the traffic. People, getting tired, and of course they want to get out and about too, but we must make sure that the streets are ready before that level of activity begins.
People do get tired, and even if they did stock up on the storm chips, I'm sure there are people that are starting to get anxious to get out and about. What's the advice the province is giving in terms of what residents should be doing right now while the weather starts to clear?
Well, first and foremost, the 511 dispatch center, that will give anyone that will give anyone the most recent updated information on what the streets and roads, what the condition would be in their area. So first and foremost, never travel without checking with 511 to get the recent information that is available to them. We are seeing a number of routes that yesterday and earlier today had travel advisories on them. That is now being lifted. But in a lot of cases, you really can't get to your destination because the full length of that route is not open. So make sure you have the information before you go, before you leave. But also it's important to continue to check on your neighbors. We have a lot of people, that have felt the impact with the accumulation of snow. And if you can in any way support your neighbors, we continue to be able to do that. Lots of communities are providing those services, and neighbors are checking on each other. So that is continuing as we speak.
A last question for you, Premier Dwight Ball. I mean, it's good to hear that it seems like your officials and workers are managing with this storm, this record-breaking storm. But I wonder, I can't help but wonder. I mean, how do you feel as the Premier, the province is in terms of emergency preparedness and these kinds of extreme weather emergencies, which meteorologists and climate change scientists say are going to keep hitting us with more regularity?
Yeah, there's no question that this is a province that have had to deal with a number of extreme weather events in the last few years, but nothing like this one. This has been very severe and one for the history books. There's no question about it. I had a conversation a few hours ago with the Federal Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Minister Bill Blair, and so we're in conversation with him now at what level of support the federal government can provide to the province. And so we're working on all of these now, but the important thing is for us as a province to understand what it is the communities would need, what it is they would be doing on the ground to support the great work that's being done. It's incredible the amount of sharing from community to community, from the provinces of resources, with communities. So it's working right now. It's been a few hours and part of the cleanup, but right now we're going to figure out, working with those communities, at what level of support the federal government could provide. They're willing to work with us. We just need to know now where the focus should be, where the priority areas would be for the federal government, when they come into this area.
Premier, thank you for letting the rest of the country know the latest.
Appreciate it, and if you need any more updates, certainly more than willing to share with your listeners. Thank you very much.
That was Premier Dwight Ball. We spoke to him from St. John's, and our show question today, how are you coping with the weather this winter? You're listening to Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio 1. I'm Duncan McHugh. Call us at 1-888-416-8333. That's 1-888-416-8333. Folks in St. John's are pulling out their shovels this morning, this afternoon, to clear their driveways after that massive storm. Some residents in a downtown neighborhood there, though, are using those shovels to clear out their living rooms. That's right, their living rooms, after an avalanche hit homes in the middle of the raging blizzard last night in the middle of the city. Chris Brooks owns a home that was hit by the avalanche. Hello.
Hello there.
What happened last night?
Well, everything was fine until suddenly there was this huge thump and crack, and a huge amount of snow slipped off the cliff. We live just under the cliff on the outer battery. It's a sort of little place that's pretty picturesque, and you see it in all the provincial tourism ads. Anyway, this has not happened before in this spot on the battery, like a huge chunk of snow came down, smacked into the back of our house and the house next door. It went right through the window of the house next door, tore the window and the window frame out, dumped a ton of snow.
So this came down a hill and just walloped your house?
That's right, yeah. And in our place here next door, there's a couple of doors that don't close properly anymore. But, I mean, thank God nobody was killed. But I've never seen it snow like this. I mean, I lived here for 35 years, and I've never seen anything remotely like this amount of snow.
So it busted open your window and the doors. What happened then?
Well, you know, what happened was 3 heroic firemen. There was a huge ton of snow. Our next-door neighbor and myself and my wife were shoveling it out, shovelful by shovelful.
Inside the house?
Yeah, from inside the house. And then, like, 3 figures appeared, looking like abominable snowmen, 3 firemen who had walked about, I would guess, easily a quarter of a mile through snow up to their waist to get here, because everything was covered in snow. The road was closed. And they turned up with shovels. And God love them, they helped shovel us out. If it hadn't been for them, we'd still be shoveling. So, on the back of their helmets, their names, I noticed, was McCarthy, Morgan, and Burke. So a big thanks to them.
Well, a big shout out to McCarthy, Morgan, and Burke, for sure. So you must have been shoveling all night?
Well, after dark, you couldn't see much. I mean, we basically stayed in. I mean, we moved to the house in front with a wood stove with a couple of neighbors, and we all sat around and kept ourselves awake and then tried to sleep and couldn't, sat around the wood stove most of the night, actually.
So it was a couple homes in the Battery neighborhood that got hit by that avalanche. What's it look like this afternoon?
Well, they've managed to clear the road, but our place right now, as I'm sitting here talking to you, looking out at our deck, which is covered in 10 feet of snow, probably.
10
Good
feet.
8 feet of snow.
10 feet.
And our next door neighbor is slowly and painfully trying to dig out. We have a little chicken coop. This may seem trivial to you, but a little chicken coop with 5 chickens in it. And the snow just sort of pushed that right up against the deck and covered it over with, good 6 feet of snow, maybe 6 or 8 feet of snow. And we were trying to figure out how to get the poor little birds out because they're still alive in there. So, any suggestions?
No, but I don't have any. But I'll throw that out to our listeners. If anyone's got a suggestion for Chris on how to get chickens, they're buried under the snow. Is that it?
Yeah, and the door is jammed and buried. So anyway,
but you can hear them. They're still alive.
You can hear them chirping in there, and we can see 3 of them. So they're still there. But,
so
we don't have...
so that's an immediate concern. What else are you looking at in the days ahead? I mean, there must be some damage inside your house if the snow got inside the house like that.
Oh yes, there is. The house next door, seriously. But the problem is, I don't know how to get rid of all this snow piled up against the back of the house where it blew the window out. We put some plywood up against the window on the inside, but that's still under a good at least 10 feet of snow. So it needs an army of snow shovelers and plus somewhere to throw the snow. There's nowhere to put the snow. It's all huge, big, massive drifts.
Boy.
It's crazy. Crazy.
That's a lot to worry about. Chris, I really appreciate you taking time to update us, and I hope things go okay today and tomorrow as you try to dig out.
Yeah, well, we'd be a lot worse off if it wasn't for those 3 firemen.
Absolutely. Shout out to those 3 firemen again. Chris Brooks, thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thanks.
Chris Brooks is a resident of St. John's. His home was hit by an avalanche in the middle of Newfoundland snowstorm last night. Our show question, how are you coping with the weather this winter? You're listening to Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio 1. I'm Duncan McHugh. Call us at 1-888-416-8333. That's 1-888-416-8333. People are watching us on our Facebook Live and sending us tweets from St. John's, like Fiza Rahman in St. John's. She shared this comment. People are starting to clean up. Many houses have snowdrifts almost to the 2nd story. Digging out is going to be fun. Lynn Fox is watching on our Facebook Live. She says, I've never seen that much snowfall in my entire life. I'm praying for the people who are removing all that snow. Yeah, take it easy. When you've got that much snowfall, you don't want people giving themselves any injuries as a result of the snow clearing. So just make sure you take breaks and go slow. The cleanup after this storm is going to take some time, but for one family, there's an even more immediate worry. An official search has been launched for a young man who went missing near Newfoundland's Conception Bay. Terry Roberts is a journalist with CBC's bureau in St. John's. He's been following this story. Hi, Terry Roberts.
Hi, Duncan.
Can you, before we get to that, the story of the young man, can you just describe the conditions where you're at right now?
Well, I'm toasty warm. I'm about 10 feet away from a propane fireplace, but my muscles are sore because I just spent several hours out trying to move tons of snow that was up against my door. So my situation, not too bad.
Tons of snow. Can you just give us, we just heard someone describe it at 10 feet covering their deck. What's it like outside of your front door?
Well, my challenge was getting out of my house this morning because there were huge drifts piled up against each door. So I had to use some shoulder power to push the door open, and just enough to squeeze my frame outside and into the snow. And so it was a challenge. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who maybe had to exit through windows or sliding doors, those kind of things, because the drifts were so high. The garage door in my garage is completely buried, and so accessing the snowblower was even a challenge.
Boy, so a lot of challenges facing people just in terms of getting out of their houses. But of course, for the family of this young man, Josh Wall, bigger worry. So can you tell us about this young man that's missing?
Yeah, that's why, a little bit of perspective here. A little bit of snow that I'm dealing with pales in comparison to what the Wall family is dealing with in a small community, rural community called Roach's Line. This is around the center part of Conception Bay on the Avalanche Peninsula. I'll set this up for you. Yesterday morning, Josh Wall, Josh is 26 years old. Josh is prone to some anxiety issues. He wasn't feeling well yesterday morning, and he wanted to go to the hospital, but of course there was no way that could happen because there was just no transportation. The roads were blocked. And later in the morning, he started feeling a little bit better. And his father is telling me this story, Wayne Wall. And so he decides he wants to go visit a friend of his in another community called Marysvale. And that's, as the crow flies, that's about 5 to 7 kilometers. And so Josh sets out on foot at 12:30 yesterday. So that's 27 hours ago here in Newfoundland time. And a few hours after that, Wayne Wall, of course, gets worried and wonders how's his son doing, and tries him on the cell phone and goes straight to voicemail for Josh Wall. So then he figures out where Josh was going, and he was going to this friend's house in Marysvale, another community, and he reaches out to this man, and Wayne finds out that the last we've heard from Josh was 1 o'clock yesterday, Newfoundland time, when he sent his location via his cell phone to his friend in Marysvale. And he was in the backcountry area, wooded area between Roach's Line and Marysvale. And his message was also very ominous, saying that I'm lost and the battery on my phone is about to expire. So 1 o'clock yesterday is the last communication that we heard from 26-year-old Josh Wall, Roach's Line. And so obviously a lot of panic set in for the family. They began trying to search for him last night, but that was impossible because the snow conditions, Wayne Wall tells me every time he'd step out, he'd go up to his shoulders in snow. So, and even an official search.
And the winds were blowing fiercely last night, I'm sure.
A raging blizzard, the type situation. I've lived in many parts of Newfoundland, including northern Newfoundland, and I've worked in Labrador and places like that. And I don't know if I can compare a situation to what we had yesterday. And Josh Wall stepped out into this yesterday at the height of one of the most ferocious storms that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime here in Newfoundland.
So,
And,
so the family started to try the search last night, Terry. It's obviously this is going to be a difficult search. What are you hearing about how it's going to be organized or how it's been organized today?
Right. Okay. So today, as you've been told, I'm sure the winds have dropped down, the snow has stopped, the skies have cleared. So an official search is now underway, and this is an area I'm very familiar with. There's a search and rescue group called the Wolverines, the Avalon North Wolverines. These guys are a bunch of warriors. They're out there now on their Argo amphibious machine, their snowmobiles. They've mobilized now to try and find Josh Wall. And the problem was that many of them were also trapped in their own homes. They couldn't get off their own properties for much of last night and this morning. And the RCMP is coordinating this. And in an unusual move for a land-based search, the RCMP has also asked for assistance from the military. So I'm hearing now that there is a Cormorant search and rescue helicopter in the air over this wooded area, the last known area where Josh Wall was seen. And still no word, and I can tell you that with authority because it's just a few minutes ago when I got off the phone with Nora Wall, and that's Josh Wall's mother. And you can just imagine what she's going through right now.
Yeah, well, you have been speaking with Nora and Wayne, the young man's father and mother. How are I mean, the father tried to get out there last night. Had a tough time, obviously. How are they coping today?
Well, this is a serious struggle for both of them. First of all, Wayne's diabetic, and he's been out. He's made several attempts, several ventures into the wilderness now to try and find his son. And so is Nora. They've both been out, and each time they go out determined to do a thorough search, and they just run into this mass of snow and wind, and they get wet, they get fatigued, they have to come back and start again, and they've been doing that now several times since yesterday. And so speaking with Nora just now, and she tells me her heart is breaking. So. And she's very grateful for everyone who's helping out and trying to find him. And there are people who are venturing in there into the woods now and trying to find Josh. But she's asking for a favor of anyone else in Conception Bay area, in the Roach's Line, Brigus area. She's asking people to just go out on your property, look around the perimeter of your property. If you have any buildings, go in there and look. Maybe see if Josh is there, and just to sing out his name, Josh Wall. She wants people to call out Josh Wall's name to see if he can be found. The situation is so desperate for Wayne and Nora right now. They want to find their son. Of course, they also have two daughters as well. So the situation, the best case scenario here, as I said, this is an area I'm familiar with, and I've ridden all-terrain vehicles around here. There are cabins. There are shelters. The best outcome we can hope for is that somehow Josh Wall found a structure last night, a cabin of some sort to get into and to seek some shelter. Otherwise, this outcome, it might not be that great because here's why. Josh was wearing a winter jacket. He had a warm hat and mittens, and he had boots. But he did not have snow pants on. So to try and be trudging through the snow, and he was on a wilderness backcountry path in those kind of conditions last night without proper equipment, it's be very difficult for any human. Despite Josh is a strong young man with some health issues, but this is the best we can hope for is that he found some shelter last night, and they'll at some point find him somewhere in a cabin, and that I might just be able to get to talk to him, and he can tell us a harrowing story.
Well, and everyone, of course, saying prayers for Josh and his family right now. Thank you for sharing that update with us. Just a last question for you, Terry Roberts. Okay. Just putting together this special today has been a bit of a challenge because it's hard getting news out of St. John's. Has been. Right. I mean, it was a rough night. Can you tell us what were the conditions like at our own CBC station last night?
Well, I mentioned the word warriors earlier, and we've got a group of news warriors here at the CBC in St. John's because they pulled off almost the impossible last night. And the word teamwork keeps coming to mind. We lost our power at the station in CBC, and even our backup power wasn't reliable. So we had to use a signal from Nova Scotia in order to broadcast our Here and Now, our supper hour show last night. And basically we had our host standing outside. We had to shoot from inside the building out through a loading door, and we did our show that way. And just speaks to the courage and the resourcefulness of the people who pulled that off yesterday Fortunate for me, I was able to walk home, but there were some people, even on the radio. The radio show has been continuous, and working with our other stations in Corner Brook on the west coast of Newfoundland, where they weren't affected so much by the weather, but we've been able to get the messages out to our audiences as much as possible, thanks to the efforts of everyone at the CBC team here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and with the assistance of our colleagues in Nova Scotia.
Nothing like sleeping at the CBC building. Boy, that's dedication for you. Terry, thank you very much for sharing the latest and particularly about the story of young Josh Wall. We hope he's going to be okay.
We're pulling for Josh Wall.
You take care.
Okay.
Terry Roberts is a journalist with CBC's bureau in St. John's in Newfoundland. Our show question today, how are you coping with the weather this winter? You're listening to Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio 1. I'm Duncan McHugh. Call us at 1-888-416-8333. That's 1-888-416-8333. Kimmy Jones in Fort McMurray, Alberta, sent this comment. Hope everyone helps each other out. That is crazy amounts of snow. Jeffrey Books, of course, the winter is happening across the country, and it's been also walloping British Columbia. Lots of snow, which is a little unusual in places like Victoria and Vancouver at this time of year. Jeffrey Brooks in Victoria tweeted this: I had to actually buy a shovel. Our shovels stayed in Montreal when we moved to Victoria in 2014. Finally broke down and bought one. They were on sale here. I saw someone tweeted a shot of a fellow who was shoveling snow in Vancouver with a lawn chair. It's on my Twitter account at Duncan McHugh. You can see it there. Well, back to Newfoundland again. That was in Vancouver, by the way. They were shoveling with the lawn chair. In Newfoundland, over 76 centimeters of snow, hurricane force winds, storm surge warnings in effect across northeastern Newfoundland. You might say it's a meteorologist's dream storm. Ryan Snodden is a CBC meteorologist who used to work in Newfoundland. He's been following the storm closely from Halifax, and he joins us now. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. From a meteorologist's point of view, Ryan, how massive was this storm?
It was so massive that I was trying everything I could to get on a plane to get there to experience it, because having spent 10 years there, and I just moved here to Halifax to the CBC just over a year ago, and I thought I'm going to miss the storm of the decade or perhaps the storm of the century, which it's turning out to be as we see the numbers coming in. But in the end, it was actually a good thing, because as Terry just mentioned, the CBC in St. John's went down. They went to a backup generator, and so I about an hour before the show was told by my boss, hey, guess what? You're going to be doing the weather for Newfoundland and Labrador from here in Halifax. So I ended up, the Mother Nature came to me, and I ended up covering the storm from here. And so it was a great teamwork effort, as Terry mentioned, and we were helping everybody. So in the end, I'm glad I didn't get on that plane, especially because I wouldn't be back here to my family for many days, as we see flights are canceled.
Yeah, flights are canceled in the airport for sure. What about the winds?
Yeah.
I mean, how strong did the winds get last night?
Unreal. 71 kilometers per hour. I'm going to make sure we get that correct. But I mean, that is just an unbelievable amount of wind. Now, that was at an island, 171, Green Island, Fortune Bay. But even on land, Bonavista. We all know where Bonavista is on the northeast coast of Newfoundland, just northwest of St. John's, and it gusted to 164. That station really stands out because not only did it see that top gust of 164, it had hurricane force winds. That is sustained, 119 or stronger. It had hurricane force winds for 7 hours last night, and it had 17 hours of 100-plus sustained winds. So just an unbelievable long-duration wind event. I mean, Newfoundlanders are hardy. They are used to their windstorms, but this was impressive just for its longevity, how long it was lasting. And when you take the winds and then all of that snow, that's what really made this such an extraordinary event.
What about storm surge, Ryan? Is that a worry now?
Absolutely. So high tide is basically right now along the north coast of Newfoundland. Storm surge warnings are still in effect. We've heard from the mayor of Bonavista that the waves were crashing in there at high tide last night. so strongly that that water was hitting his third-story window, and I believe his house is 80 feet from the coast. So that gives you a sense of how fierce the waves were last night. We've seen pictures of infrastructure damage and roads that are impassable, just littered with rocks and debris because the storm surge was so severe last night. We're going through another high tide, as I said, early this afternoon. But thankfully, that will be coming to an end here over the next couple of hours, and then we'll start to see that water receding. But when you imagine, basically now 24 hours of relentless northerly winds coming in along that north coast, the water just builds up and builds up and builds up. And so then you add in those crashing, pounding waves and then high tide on top of that. Just not a great situation at all.
You mentioned, Ryan, I mean, from a meteorologist perspective, wanting to be part of the storm of the decade, maybe the storm of the century, can you give us a sense, or do you have a sense yet about how precedent-setting this storm has been for Newfoundland?
Well, no question. In terms of a 24-hour snowfall, that record was broken yesterday. 76 centimeters in 24 hours in St. John. So that broke the record of a 24-hour snowfall, breaking the old record set back in 1999. Now, the crazy thing about that 1999 storm is it happened in April. It happened, over this about a day and a half, April 5th and 6th. The total there was 82 centimeters. And so while at the airport, while we're not going to officially break that number, we are seeing reports of 90 centimeters in next door to St. John's in the community of Mount Pearl. And so it's safe to say that, this one was equally as impressive in terms of snowfall, even though it didn't quite break that record. By the way, if you dig through all of the records all the way back to the old downtown station in St. John's in 1894, there was a storm that dropped 100 centimeters one day and 50 centimeters the next. I think it came in around 152 centimeters. Now, I'm not sure what snowfall measurements were like back in 1894 and whether we can maybe take that with a bit of a grain of salt, but it's been a long, long time since we've seen a storm this severe. No question about that. That 99 storm was impressive, but the winds weren't there. And the snow was melted, but they say within a week or two as things warmed up. This one hit in January, Duncan, so the snow is going to be around for a long, long time, and it will be much more problematic.
And last question for you. I mean, we just heard Terry describing for us what it was like in CBC St. John's. Obviously, the CBC station there lost power, and they had to broadcast from Halifax to Newfoundland. You had to go on air. You mentioned it to give the forecast for Newfoundland from Halifax. What was that like for you?
It was pretty incredible because, as I said, having been there for a decade, thankfully I was very familiar with the geography and the storm. And myself, I had been working with the meteorologist there, Ashley Braweiler, throughout the day, just helping her prep giving her some assistance because it was such a beast of a storm and had been tracking it in the days leading up. So thankfully I was familiar with the storm. But I'll tell you, when your producer runs down and says, can you go on the air in an hour and 20 minutes and cover what is just a massive, massive storm, the heart starts pumping pretty quickly. I'll tell you that. It was certainly an evening I won't forget covering that storm. And I'm glad that I was able to help, though, and because, I obviously have great memories of Newfoundland, and I still love all my colleagues there. And so it was great that I could help out.
And Ryan, I'm really pleased that you can give us the latest across the country on the weather there today in Newfoundland. You're going to check back in with us next hour just to give us an update. Is that right?
Absolutely, and maybe we'll talk about the next snowfall, which is on the way there for Sunday night.
We'll do that then. Ryan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ryan Snodden is a CBC meteorologist based in Halifax. Our show question today, how are you coping with the weather this winter? You're listening to Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio 1. I'm Duncan McHugh. Call us at 1-888-416-8333. That's 1-888-416-8333. Sheila O'Leary tweeted us, the biggest I've witnessed. We've been immobilized with the blizzard, state of emergency, and cleanup to come. Best thing is how neighbors and community come together. Huge hashtag gratitude to our snow clearing operators and all service providers. Yes, absolutely. If you've got some good stories to share about how people are coming together, how you're spending time during the storm. I mean, my goodness, that's a lot. We're still hearing that people can't get out of their houses because there's so much snow there. So by all means, give us a ring if you got phone service. There are, I believe the Premier said there are 26,000. Just over 20,000 customers who still don't have power in Newfoundland right now. Let's go to John Lennon, who's calling from St. John's. Hi, John. Welcome to Checkup.
Hi there. How's it going?
It's going well for me. How about you?
Well, I guess we're kind of middle-aged people, and Boy Scouts, so we're kind of prepared. We've worked with some search and rescue organizations in central Newfoundland, and I've been involved with, I guess, the NGOs and ENGOs that have been talking about what sort of modeling climate change is going to be giving us here in Canada for decades now, and we knew that this sort of thing was coming, and it's interesting to see it play out in real time. Shout out to Sheila O'Leary. She put out that there was a 94-year-old lady on, I think it was Wishing Well or Merry Meeting, that couldn't get out, and within minutes she was shoveled out. But this idea of being prepared, and I'm wondering how prepared we are and how quick we should bring in the military, and maybe a little bit quicker. A lot of people are thinking than waiting as we are,
And you have been out and about helping your neighbors. I understand you were chasing after a dog.
Oh, yeah. Well, in order to get out, we get a 2-story house. I'm in the second story because I found out the mother and daughter are vicious Scrabble fanatics. They broke out the Scrabble game, and they're hard at it downstairs. So I'm up here for a bit of peace. But this morning we had to take the mosquito screen out of the storm door to crawl out over and roll out over the drifts. The drifts are amazing. There's 30-foot drifts up on Brazel and up in the Goulds. There's overpass drifted in, and when I was out with the dog last night in the thick of it, we didn't get past the property, but it was a really sideways stinging sleet. So, I mean, you couldn't bear to look into the wind. You had to keep the back to the wind, and it was sticking to you. God bless young Mr. Wall if he didn't have any snow pants on, because I was just out there in sweats, and myself and the dog were full of snow within minutes, layered. So please God, that gives him an insulating value.
Yeah,
but,
and of course,
two nautical miles outside of the Narrows, there's a wave buoy, and at noon today it recorded 50 feet.
Boy. John, thank you very much for sharing the perspective from your home in St. John's.
Yeah, and in closing, I was waiting all week for the meteorologist to talk about the climate change models that have predicted this for decades, and it's time we start preparing. Because this sort of thing will be commonplace, and it could easily sit over us and just go in a circle for days. So I call on people to debrief themselves, their neighbors, and their communities, and demand that their input is put into how we handle this going forward.
Absolutely, and we will have. We're going to be joined by Dave Phillips, who is Environment Canada's senior climatologist, a little later in the program. So we'll talk about that as well, climate change and how that's impacting us, this kind of extreme weather. John, thanks very much for calling.
Okay, good luck. God bless.
Alex McCarney's on the line from Montreal. Hi, Alex. Welcome to Checkup.
Duncan, wow, that's the worst storm I've ever heard of. I've lived through a couple, but. And one thing I can tell you, here in Montreal, we could use some of your snow. We don't have a lot here, unfortunately, but I've lived through a couple of these kind of events, and but one of this thing that's really making this bad is the hurricane as well. So I guess you're going to have a lot of structural damage, infrastructure, probably a lot of power is out. And So it's to add insult to injury. It's a really, really, really bad situation that these folks find themselves in.
It is, and I mean, we heard from the Premier earlier in the program, and apparently, the work is well underway, but there still are over 20,000 customers without power. And
you know what? That it surprises me that it's so few. I would have thought that there would be a lot more. But maybe the infrastructure there is more resilient. I lived through the ice storm here. I lived through blizzards back in the 70s in Ottawa, and I can tell you it's no piece of cake.
No, and I mean, do you have a strategy at all when you went through blizzards in those particulars in Ottawa and Montreal?
I was a young one, so I wasn't really thinking much about that. I was just having a lot of fun. But now, as an older fellow, I really would hope that I think your previous caller, John, had talked about some kind of a plan. Usually, they talk about having, if you can lay by 72 hours worth of stuff, and you don't necessarily have to things that don't necessarily have to be heated. Because one thing is that if power is out and if people are trying to heat with fuel and stuff like that, they can be easily poisoned by carbon monoxide. And that's also with the amount of snow like that, I would hope that a lot of the people will be thinking, hopefully, to clean their roofs, because otherwise those suckers can snap just like anything. And
last question for you, Alex. Yeah, I mean, it's been a bit of a warmer winter in central Canada, certainly in
Ontario. Well, today I'm pretty cold, but
Well, yeah. So it seems the chill seems to be hitting in today. But how are you finding winter thus far?
Well, thus far it's been a little bit of a non-starter. I think we've had like 2 or 3 days of snow. There's some snow here today, and it's on the ground. But I could use just like a normal winter. But I think now abnormal is the new normal, as the other man said, and I think we're going to have to find all kind of different ways and means to be more resilient and to be more mindful of what's going on.
A good point, Alex. Thanks very much for calling from Montreal.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Sharon, we earlier had Chris Brooks on who talked about the avalanche that walloped his house last night in the Battery neighborhood in St. John's. He's looking at his chickens, trying to figure out how to get his chickens out from underneath the snow. So we asked if there were anybody had any tips. Sharon Russell sent in offered this tip for Chris Brooks' snowed-in chickens. Perhaps could use a blowtorch. To melt the snow to access the chickens inside. Blowtorch. Okay, there you go. Careful if you're out and about with a blowtorch. The storm has caused widespread power outages across Newfoundland. Overnight, Newfoundland Power said its crews were working to restore electricity for about 21,000 customers. One of those customers is Gus Penton, who lives on Fogo Island, and we've got him now on the line. Hello, Gus.
Yes, this is Duncan McHugh.
It is, yes, sir.
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear.
Oh, that's good to hear. I'm glad that you've got the power and you've got radio on at least.
Yeah, and you signed off Jimmy Gwitch.
That's me. That's
the Duncan McHugh.
That's the Duncan McHugh. Tell me,
okay.
Fogo Island, Gus. What are the conditions like there right now?
Well, I'll tell you. Now it's not Newfoundland Power. We're under hydro.
Okay.
We're under hydro. Now, we're on the northeast coast, with your geography, if you're familiar with geography.
So for listeners who aren't familiar with Fogo Island, can you tell us where it is? Just if we were looking at on a map.
We're on the northeast coast, Notre Dame Bay, but we're an island of Newfoundland. The main island of Newfoundland is about 3,000 people. And we have a new inn built here a few years ago, and we had the Fogo Island fishery, which is shrimp, crab, cod, everything. That's what keeps the whole island going and everything. And the weather conditions, man, I'll tell you, Duncan, I never see Mother Nature. She's very powerful. It was the wind was relentless, like it wouldn't, and the whiteout conditions all through the night, like it never slacked. Right, it went right on through. And the feeling you have is you panic if you're in it, like it was all around you. when you're out in it. Oh, it was wicked. It was.
Did you batten down the hatches, Gus?
Oh, I battened down the hatches and went out and shoveled around the house, keep it all clear a few times, but got up this morning, it was all snowed up again, right? And the old fellas never, but it was relentless. It never, I mean, you mark this one for 2020, for the centuries ahead, I'll tell you, because I never seen anything like that. And, you know, what's becoming of the world? I mean, here's Australia burning and Newfoundland freezing. You know, it's wicked. And we got a pretty good hydro system here.
Yep.
Like since Dane come in, they changed the lines, put all the lines closer to the highway so they can get access through, because we were in the wilderness and on the hills, the lines, the hydro lines, but now they put them closer to the road so they can get better access for fixing and that. And we never lost it. We had good power, but we got it gone now. It went 1 or 2 o'clock last night. And we haven't got it back yet.
So you haven't got. So, how many people do you know of in your neighborhood in the area there who don't have power? I mean, how are they staying warm? How are they doing without electricity?
Well, a lot of them on electric heat. Well, we got the wood stove, and I got a furnace here that I use sometimes in that. But there's a lot of electric heat in that. But they have generators, right? They leave outside or in their place and get the heat in that, right? And now you're becoming a problem where things are torn. Like I had for lunch, I had bully beef and some shavings of turkey roll and ham and that. And then I went to the fridge to get me ice cream. I got a big 2 liter of ice cream, and when I went, there was melted.
Oh, now you got a generator going, Gus?
No, I don't have a generator, but the house is ready to hook up to one. I don't have one, see? But a lot of people around do have one. That's how they, you know. But you got to, you know, fill that up every so often. But hopefully we'll get it back this evening. We don't lose it very much. I must say they got a pretty good system here. And the way we're connected to the mainland, they got a cable coming through the run where the ferry across the island is 9 miles, but it got it wrapped in lead, and it comes across there. They done that 30 years ago, so they never had a hook with that. Like it's coming from Bay to Spear, and that's what it comes in under the water in the seabed. We never had a hook with that. If that goes down, you're looking at a week or two, because they got to go in the ocean and bring in, but it's usually on the lines, probably, with this wind and that, eh?
And the last question for you, because I got a break for news soon, Gus, but can you tell me, I mean, you said it was wicked last night. Have you ever seen anything like
it? I have never seen anything like it, Duncan boy. I'll tell you, it was wicked, like relentless. It never, now it's subsided a bit here now. We still got a bit of wind, but you can see. But last night, the visibility, you had no visibility, and it was all around you when you were in it, right? And it's too bad about that young fellow.
Yes, I mean, well, and you know, we everyone's saying prayers for him, and I hope that crew. I hope they have some results today for the family.
A good result on it.
Gus, I'm really glad that you could join us from Fogo Island and give us an update there. Jimmy Gwitch.
And I'll tell you, you keep it up, because this is good security for people too, and information, right?
All right, you take care. Best of luck, Gus. That's Gus Penton. He's a resident of Fogo Island. If you're just tuning in, we're going to have the news coming up shortly. I'm Duncan McHugh. This is a special edition of Cross Country Checkup. We're asking, how are you coping with the weather this winter? Of course, after that record-smashing blizzard that walloped Newfoundland and Labrador last night. We will have much more in the next hour, and we want to hear from folks about their weather conditions right across the country, but we're going to take a short break for the news.
From CBC News, The World This Hour, I'm Dennis Kelman. Digging out in Newfoundland.
Snow is piled so high, and you have to crawl out the door and crawl on top of your car to get a gauge of how bad it is. It's because it's piled way above my height, and I'm 5'11".
I was kind of scared, so we just watched chick flicks and ate lots of food.
I threw up some Christmas lights and turned on a Christmas movie and pretended that it was like an old-fashioned snowy Christmas. Completely ignored it until today. Today we're facing the reality here.
And that reality, a record-breaking storm continuing to keep daily life on pause. A blizzard warning covering much of eastern Newfoundland is lifted. States of emergencies remain in effect in several municipalities. The CBC's Chris O'Neill-Yates has more from St. John's.
Well, it's going to be quite a long recovery process, because this is uncharted territory. People are being advised to stay in. The federal government has offered help. The Prime Minister has reached out to the province and to the city. There is going to be a challenge as to where to put all this snow environmentally. They can't just dump it in the harbor. They're not permitted to do that. So just where to put all this, and on top of the 100 plus centimeters that was already on the ground in St. John's. So people will be trying to dig out from this the best way they can, but everybody is urging patience as they try to deal with what is deemed to be just a really unique and unprecedented situation.
That's the CBC's Chris O'Neill-Yates in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. Buckingham Palace has a new agreement between the royal family and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Prince Harry will step back from royal duties and not receive the accompanying funds. The couple will no longer be referred to as His or Her Royal Highness, and the couple says they want to repay funds used to refurbish their current home in Britain. The statement provides no details on security arrangements. The agreement takes effect in this spring. Prince Harry and Meghan announced last month they want to step back from royal duties and live part of the year in Canada. A Cree community in central Alberta is in mourning after a teenager froze to death during a bitter cold snap earlier this month. The 16-year-old boy, who CBC is not naming, was under government care. Rafi Boudjikanian reports.
I've had some people who've been upset.
For Vernon Saddleback, there are still far too many questions about how a teenage boy from the Samson Cree Nation died.
How could we lose a child in care?
Saddleback is the chief of the nation. He says Royal Canadian Mounted Police notified them about the death last Saturday.
Losing a child for community is tragic.
The teen lived in government care away from the nation in the town of Rocky Mountain House. The RCMP say he was reported missing 8 days ago. They found him outside hours later. On a night, Saddleback recalls, temperatures plunged as low as minus 29 degrees.
All we know is that he was found frozen.
Police are not treating this as a suspicious death. The agency responsible for his housing would not comment. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Rocky Mountain House, Alberta.
Parts of eastern Australia are being hit with heavy rain and thunderstorms. Welcome news for crews fighting the massive wildfires. More Canadians are on their way to help battle the flames, including 2 Yukon First Nations wildland firefighters. The CBC's Jane Sponigal was at a special send-off for the pair.
Students from Elijah Smith Elementary School are drumming and dancing to the fire song, a fitting tribute for firefighters Chad Thomas and Jordan Prophet to help them on their journey to Australia. They're given gifts of traditional medicine like sweetgrass, cedar, and tobacco. The students at Elijah Smith have lots of questions for Thomas to answer.
When do you not want to go fight fires?
Sometimes the fire just blows up and it's so crazy and you get so scared and you can't go in to fight the fire.
That's something the 2 firefighters could face when they arrive in New South Wales, where over 100 fires are still burning. Jane Sponigal, CBC News, Whitehorse.
And that is your World This Hour. For CBC News, I'm Dennis Kelman.
Welcome back. You're listening to a special edition of Cross Country Checkup. I'm Duncan McHugh. If you're just tuning in, it's a special Saturday edition of Cross Country Checkup. We're covering that record-smashing blizzard that walloped Newfoundland and Labrador last night. Winds over 150 kilometers an hour, dumping an unprecedented 70 centimeters of snow last night. As you're hearing in the news, the storm warning has been lifted, but of course Newfoundland isn't the only part of the country getting pummeled by winter right now. BC and Edmonton enduring record-smashing cold temperatures this weekend. A listener just tweeted me from British Columbia. Lots of snow in Vancouver still. The snow is back in Vancouver after they got hit this week. So our question today, how are you coping with the weather this winter? Give us a call, 1-888-416-8333. That's 1-888-416-8333. Fred Dick is on the line from Port Carlin, Ontario. Hi, Fred. Welcome to Checkup.
Hi, Duncan. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
How are things in Toronto?
You know what? It's starting to snow. We've had a warm winter, I have to say. We got an early bunch of snow in November, and then I've been biking to work. I have to yesterday. I've been biking to work yesterday. I biked into work, but not today. It's pretty snowy today. How about in Port Carlin?
Well, it's much the same. We're usually a few degrees colder, and we usually get more snow than you, but they're similar. We have similar weather. First of all, I just want to say, I'm delighted to hear Cross Country Checkup come in on a Saturday. Now, I know the topic is serious to some people. To me, it's a total delight, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, thank you can join us. I'm glad you could listen.
Yeah, and the last time I remember Cross Country Checkup being off schedule, it was Rex Murphy about 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a totally different thing. And as I'm about to expound on, this is a total delight to me. I'm standing here. I'm looking out a big window on Lake Muskoka, and all I see is white. The wind is howling. The pine branches are waving, and I can't see the far shore. And it's absolutely wonderful. And I'm here by myself, all in the house, and I'm having a great time.
And, it is winter. It is Canada. Of course, there's snow, but as you've been hearing in the first hour, they really got it. They got hit yesterday hard in Newfoundland. What do you make of the various weather situations that we're finding ourselves in this particular winter?
I know that. I've been in a storm bad enough to be at least in quantity the same as what St. John just got. So I know what it's like to deal with that. I can remember the aftermath of a storm like that, and I was thinking, gosh, if it snows more, this is actually going to be frightening. How are we going to get around? But for me right now today, I'm looking forward to taking a walk to the highway. I'm going to go get the paper, my Saturday paper, and I'm going to have a great time during the walk and enjoying the snow.
Well, listen, I hope you enjoy that wintry walk and enjoy the paper. And Fred, glad you could tune into the special edition of Checkup on Saturday.
Well, thank you. I hope it doesn't send a Toronto lynch mob to my door.
Let's hope it doesn't.
Okay, thanks, Duncan.
And if you are tuning in, this is a special edition of Cross Country Checkup. Give us a call. We are focusing on the weather and that big blizzard and storm that hit Newfoundland and Labrador. But of course, we're lots of winter all over the country right now. And if you want to phone in and let us know how things are in your neck of the woods, give us a call, 1-888-416-8333. Now, if you go on Twitter this morning, you'll see some pretty wild photos and videos of Newfoundland, of folks that are absolutely buried in snow. I'm watching Newsnet right now, and they're digging themselves out. People are snowboarding down the streets there, digging themselves massive snow forts on their front doorsteps. In parts of the city, the snow is up to people's waists and higher. Todd O'Brien is a reporter with CBC in St. John's. He was snapping out some photos today of what people are calling Snowmageddon there, and he joins us now. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Duncan.
I just tweeted out some of the photos that you've been sending us to our team here at Checkup. Tell our listeners, describe for us what it looks like right now.
Well, Duncan, I'm on the corner of Gower Street. It's right downtown and Bannerman Street. I'm on a sort of a snowdrift, and there's a one-way sign, and my chest is above that one-way sign. And when I look across at a very colorful house, my head, I can almost peer into their top floor. Now, to my left is a van that's in front of a little car, and it's completely, there's over a meter of snow above that car. And that's the situation. I look down the street, there's a guy with a skidoo. There's people on
snowshoes, yep.
Snowshoes, yes, which I'm wearing, thankfully. And people are just out now for a gawk, and people are busy, just trying to dig out. And when I was here this morning around 11:30, there was snow on this Gower Street, which is sort of a side street, a main side street. Today, there is one one cut going right down it.
Todd, I've been to St. John's, and it is steep in parts of the town there, in parts of the city. So, that's got to be making things challenging in terms of getting around and cleaning up.
Yeah, people just sometimes compare it to San Francisco of Canada. Right now, like I said, a lot of those streets still have snow on them. So there's nothing really moving on them. So except I just saw a grader, thankfully. But yeah, they can be quite steep, and even in the wintertime, there's a bit of snow down with your car. It's a real challenge getting around, and it can be pretty slippery out there.
Slippery. We've got a fellow who's going to be on the line in a couple of minutes who was apparently snowboarding around town today.
Well, there's apparently a couple of companies from the States who who there was no snow south of the border, and they were up here the last few days shooting videos, and I know that's been going on. I saw some online and this was before the storm, so if they're still around, man, they're in for a real treat.
Last night, Todd, where were you when the storm hit?
I was helping produce our emergency radio show out of St. John's. I guess there must have been I was there from 9 a.m. till about midnight, and there was about 20 of us there, and by the end of it, a couple of people tried to get out to go to a nearby hotel, but they had to turn back. These people were in their 20s, they were young, fit, but the winds were so ferocious, it was knocking people down, it was, banging into your face. So we stayed. Once we were done, we slept on. Some of us slept on the floor. It wasn't that much fun.
But the CBC did lose power, right?
Well, yeah. What happened was, we have a 15-minute battery, okay? And once the power goes to our building, this battery. Well, what's supposed to happen is the generator's supposed to kick in. It didn't kick in. This 15-minute battery kept us on the air for 15 minutes, but once the charge went, then even when the generator came back on, we were still off the air. We had lights and things, but we couldn't broadcast. So that's essentially what happened. There was some kind of a problem with the generator.
Now, we had Premier Dwight Ball on earlier in the program. He gave us a good briefing on where things are at in terms of the cleanup, and clearly there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but he felt that things were well underway and underhand. Can you give us just a general feeling as you've been out and about today and sending us some of those pictures on your Twitter account? I mean, what's the general feeling? How are folks feeling in town?
Well, you know what? I'll just say, one of my friends did a Facebook post that said, downtown has turned into an impromptu winter carnival with snowshoeing, skiing, snowboarding, snowmobiles, and dogs, lots of dogs. So as you walk along, I'm looking at a street now that is absolutely jammed with snow. And I was talking to a fellow just then, and then he was digging out, and I was saying, are you going to get to work on Monday? Well, he lives downtown, so he can, but his kids are in another part of town. But the thing is, we have a state of emergency, so it's probably a good thing, so we can get rid of some of this snow. There goes a guy in a snowmobile.
Sounds like a snowmobile going by you there, yeah.
So anyways, what he was saying, he's digging out his car and putting the snow into the road because there's really nowhere else to go. And, but people are, it's a strange thing when you've come through something like this. There's a sense of, it is sometimes a bit of sense of fun, maybe not for, if you've lost your power and, you're shut in, but, people are sort of, getting on with it and just marveling at, Father Nature and, what all this threw at us.
Well, Todd O'Brien, you must be tired after keeping people in the province updated. Thank you for keeping us in the country updated, and thank you so much. If you want to see Todd's journeys around town in St. John's, you can go to his Twitter account. What's your Twitter?
I think it's Todd_O'Brien.
There you go. Thank you very much, Todd. Thank you for filling us in.
Okay, Dunk.
And, or you can go to my Twitter account, @Duncan McHugh, send out some just good photos to show you just how much snow hit St. John's last night, and that them digging out today. Kate Hanna in South Shore, Nova Scotia, sent in this email. With people undergoing such extreme hardships, why does our military not respond as quickly as they do in other world locations? We did have the Premier on, David Ball, earlier, and he said he has been in touch with his federal counterparts. There hasn't been a request. I believe the Premier said there has not been a request for the military at this point. So, Kate, the province hasn't asked for that assistance, but a good thought. Thank you for tweeting it. Selena Mary Murphy, watching on Facebook Live, shared this. My house is on Signal Hill, and there is a 7-foot drift in front of my door. No power. House is now 5 degrees. Cindy Ouellette shared this comment. Blustery winter storm here in Ottawa, but nothing like what our fellow Canadians are experiencing in Newfoundland. Sonia Mills is on the line in Port Rexton. Hi, Sonia. Welcome to Checkup.
Hi, thank you, Duncan.
What are your thoughts about winter so far?
Well, it's been a pretty interesting one for sure. My wife and I, we moved to Port Rexton 4 years ago, and this has definitely been the craziest winter yet to date. I grew up in Clarenville nearby, and I remember a couple of my childhood where, we got major drifts and stuff up to the second story of our house, but still nothing like this.
And so, describe what the situation for what it's like in Port Rexon. We've heard a lot from folks in St. John's, but Port Rexon's a little bit out of town there. Describe how the storm hit you last night.
Yeah, so we were in in quite the wake of the storm as well. We are about half an hour from Bonavista, and it was reported in Bonavista that wind gusts were up to 164 kilometers an hour, and they received 71 centimeters. So I'm sure we received somewhere around that same ballpark. We were fortunate not to have lost any power. I don't know how that happened, but I'm amazed and very, very grateful for it. But we own a brewery here in town, and we're actually about to pop our skis on and go check it out to make sure everything is okay in that end. But all I can see out of our windows now, well, I can see only about half of our windows. The other back half of our house is covered in complete drift. The door is right to the top, filled with snow. And we've got drifts that you could barely see over. The road is completely snowed in. There's no option for, taking your car anywhere.
So you're going to ski over to the brew pub today.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of the current emergency services are focused on the cities and the major towns. What about in Port Rexon? I mean, is there hope that you're going to be getting your roads cleared anytime soon?
I think some of the roads, the main roads, have been cleared. We are kind of in the back end of town. So from what I've heard from reports from others, the main roads in town have been cleared as best as they could. I think there are some vehicles that are able to get out. Hopefully the emergency responders can get out. But from my end, no, all I can see is one major drift right through our road.
So you and your girlfriend are hunkered down. How you been passing time? Yeah, fortunately you got power.
Yes. So we had the work stove going last night. We played some crib, and really just kind of hanging in there, hoping the power doesn't go out. We're getting prepared for it. We all of the houses out here, we don't have municipal water supplies. So if the power goes out, we lose water. So we fill the bathtub with water in case we needed to, flush our toilets if the power goes out. A few different measures like that, keeping the house warm with the wood stove, bringing in as much wood as we can, that kind of thing.
Sonia, good to hear about. It sounds like you might be playing crib for another couple of days.
I think so. It's definitely hunker down, stay warm, stay cozy, and be prepared.
And when you do get over to your brewery, I hope things are okay over at your work site.
Thank you. Yes, we're making sure things are with the power on. Beer can still, things are still happening and stuff like that in the brewing tank. So we're just going to go keep an eye on things now, make sure things are doing what's supposed to do, and we didn't receive any damage or any issues over at that building.
All right, you take care up there in Port Rexon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Des Walsh is on the line from St. John's. Hi, Des. Welcome to Checkup.
Hi. Thanks very much.
You're a poet, Des.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the storm.
Well, it was, it certainly was everything they forecast. It was yesterday morning. It was fairly civilized here. It wasn't too bad. Right around lunchtime, we started getting the snow, but then the snow kept coming. And of course, what really nailed us were these, and they really were hurricane force winds. So you have that with that amount of snow. It was just pretty brutal. I kept going outside. I have the door to my house is a screen door, of course, that opens out. So I kept shoveling because I didn't want to get stuck if anything happened. You had to get out of the house quickly. So after 5 attempts at this, or 5, cleanings, I just gave up on it. I said, well, I got to get out quick. I'll have to beat out a window. Because then when I got up this morning, I couldn't get out. It was about 5-foot drift right up my steps against my doors. I had to wait till a friend came and shoveled me out.
Now, Des, you mentioned a friend coming over to help shovel you out. I mean, have you had a chance to be out and about and see some of the folks pitching in and some of those, those community? We talk about communities coming together at times like this.
Yeah, not as such, but right here on my own street, because where there's a state of emergency ban. Of course, I couldn't go anywhere anyway. It's quite amazing. Like right out in front of my house. I don't think I'm exaggerating. I think they're like probably 6-foot drifts because the pile hasn't come down the street yet. Naturally they're focusing on the main routes for emergency vehicles and things. So that's all good. But my neighbor's car was completely invisible. He has a little driveway between our two houses, and I'd say that without exaggeration, there's 10, 12 feet of snow on top of his car.
Boy, wow.
So we were all out, everybody's out giving a hand with that. So,
Des, thanks very much for giving us your perspective from St. John's.
Yeah, it was a rough one, but I think we'll get through it.
Take care. Gordon Priest in Regina sent us this tweet. The storm is so powerful it's blown in Cross Country Checkup a full 26 hours early. Yes, indeed, it is. It's a Saturday edition of Cross Country Checkup. We'll be back again tomorrow, of course, at our regular normal time, but this is a big storm, as you just heard Des say. 10 feet of snow in some areas in his neighborhood, so we figured we better get on the air and give people the latest in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, but also, of course, there's winter right across the country, and it is there's been some record-breaking winter so far in the past week or so. So we thought we should check in with others too. John Strugnall tweeted us this: the cold this week has been unbearable, nearly minus 50 in Jasper, Alberta, with wind chill, which is easily the coldest I've ever experienced in my life. Lots of layers, wool, down, base layers, and only leave the house if required. If you want to talk about the weather in your neck of the woods, in your part of the country, give us a call, 1-888-416-8333. Let us know how winter is treating you. But of course, we are focused on the storm in Newfoundland and how people are digging out and how they're faring now. Kelly Sandoval is on the line from St. John's. Hi, Kelly. Welcome to Checkup.
Hi, Duncan. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Oh, pretty good, all considered, yes.
You've got some horses, I understand. Can you tell us about them?
Yeah, well, I'm the executive director of Rainbow Riders, which is a therapeutic riding center that clientele is children and youth with physical and cognitive and emotional disabilities. So we are a nonprofit. So we have the pleasure of having 16 horses in our facility. And so that has been obviously a huge undertaking, a huge challenge to try to make sure that they are well cared for during this ordeal.
Well, how are you getting to them, Kelly?
Well, we are blessed with amazing staff, amazing horse people that I don't know if anybody is familiar with horse people, but they are very, very passionate, unique. They are I can't say enough about how dedicated they are. And they have been overnight with the horses ever since Thursday night.
Since Thursday night?
Yes.
So they're staying there and sleeping with the horses?
They're sleeping, well, not directly in the barn area.
Yes.
We have like the reception and a multi-purpose room area, and they've got like makeshift cots set up there. And I made sure that they had all the supplies, all the storm emergency supplies, and enough food and water.
Well, that was my next question. Was how? I mean, do you have enough food for the? I mean, that's 16 horses. That's a fair chunk of food that you got to have prepared for them.
Well, we have a lot. Yes. Well, we have all their food ready to go. Made sure that it was at the ready so that they wouldn't have to be going out into our coverall area where we keep the hay. We also had to bring a huge water tank in from a farther away area so that it was handy in case there was any issues with water. So there was a fair bit of mitigating, some of the potential pitfalls of something like this happening. So luckily, everything has been going fine. I definitely feel like the girls over there are ready to go home now and get a shower.
I bet.
Especially working in a barn, you can imagine. So they are definitely ready, and I feel terrible that I cannot be there, or the other staff feel terrible that they can't get there to relieve them to a certain degree. But because of the state of emergency and, non-essential vehicles being banned basically from driving, it's kind of one of those situations that we just have to wait out.
And Kelly, I just wonder if, animals can be funny during storms sometimes, all kinds of different animals. I wonder, what did the girls tell you about how the horses have reacted through all this?
Oh gosh, well they've been keeping pretty close eye to them and trying to keep them close enough to their routine as possible, which for the most part has been the case, because I think the horses have really benefited from having the staff there, around the clock, because of course the wind got so high. It was alarming, I'm sure, for many of them. They were kind of pricking their ears up and trying to figure out what was going on. We're used to wind, but nothing like last night. It was unreal, and certainly the horses were a little uptight. But again, the staff were amazing, and they said nothing too out of the ordinary for the horses. They were definitely curious. They definitely know something's on the go, but they have been fabulous.
And callers may have missed it at the beginning there, but you said that these are therapy horses. They're there for children with disabilities. Can you tell us just a little bit about them?
Sure. Well, the therapy horses too. They're picked and they're chosen for their demeanor. They're chosen for their kind of soundness, and they're trained as well for making sure that they're sound and what we call bomb-proof. Basically, they really have to be exceptional horses. So that also helps too, because these horses are not, typically easily spooked for the most part. However, we do have several privately owned horses in our barn as well, and they are thoroughbreds and a lot more hot-blooded breeds, and they can be a little bit more, reactive, if you will.
Kelly, thank you for updating us on your group of horses over there in St. John's. I hope the girls get a break in the next day or two.
I hope so. Yes, they're amazing staff. Can't say enough about how wonderful they are.
Okay, you take care. Good luck digging out.
Thank you.
Rose McNeil in St. Thomas, Ontario, is watching on our Facebook Live, and she shared this story. I have seen some wicked storms in Newfoundland, but I think this beats it all. I remember my dad trying to drive from St. John's to Trepassey one night, usually a 2-hour drive, but this one took us 4.5 hours. My dad had to roll down the window to make sure we were actually on the road. What a hairy night. I do know that in St. John's and around they are saying if you don't need to go anywhere, try to stay off the roads. They're still trying to clear up, so hopefully you won't be going through a situation like Rose McNeil and her dad did back in the day. Lon Wood, holy cow, this is a call from Reykjavik, Iceland. Lon Wood is on the line. Hi, Lon, welcome to Checkup.
Hi, Duncan.
You're phoning from Iceland.
That's correct.
But you're from Vancouver, is that right?
I'm from Vancouver Island.
Okay.
I did grow up on the Manitoba, Saskatchewan winters, but out in BC, I forgot about that.
And so BC is Vancouver has seen some pretty nasty weather this week.
Yes. So when we planned 10 days in Iceland, people thought we were nuts. And right now it's 0 degrees and no wind and no snow, and we've had a marvelous time touring around.
So it's actually warmer in Reykjavik than it is in Vancouver right now, then.
Absolutely.
So tell us, what are you checking back? Are you sending pictures back of the no snow in Iceland back to your friends in Vancouver?
Well, I have, and not intentionally. They have outdone me with the pictures of buses gridlocked on Granville Street Bridge and trees pushed over onto houses, and it's quite rough for BC, which is not used to it.
No, and so I reported in Vancouver for almost 2 decades, and I have to say, when I first moved there, we didn't even have a snow shovel, and then in the later years certainly had to invest in some snow tires. I mean, it seemed that snow was walloping Vancouver more and more often.
They're talking about that more now, but the serious side to me is that the climate change naysayers are saying, "Oh, look at this cold. This isn't warming." But here in Iceland, to a person I've met, they are very concerned. Their glaciers here are diminishing at a rapid rate, and it's the balance of things has been thrown out quite a bit, and it doesn't look good.
No, so you're there on vacation, but you're hearing people concerned about climate change and how it's impacting Iceland.
Oh yes, they subsist on their glaciers, and the lava ground filters like a Brita filter. They have the purest and tastiest water in the world. No chlorination, no fluoride, and it's disappearing.
Lon, I'm glad, even though you're on vacation in Iceland, you're listening to the Checkup on a weekend, and I'm glad you could catch us and phone in.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to include me as another perspective on this.
You take care.
Thank you, Duncan.
Corrine Peddle-Tulk in Stephenville, Newfoundland, said this: so much concern for our seniors and those with medical and mental health issues. Thanks to all who are working together to take care of each other. A good reminder, Corinne, if you are in Newfoundland and Labrador right now and have some either friends or family or neighbors who are seniors, good idea to try to do your best to check in with them. It can be harder at these times for, whether it's extreme heat or just a whole dump of snow like Newfoundland and Labrador experienced. It can be harder on seniors, so do your best to just go in and check on your neighbors and make sure that they're doing okay, especially for those that may have medical conditions. A really good reminder, Corinne. Thank you for sending that in. Let's check in again with CBC meteorologist Ryan Snodden, who's been following the storm closely from Halifax, and he gave us the forecast for Newfoundland last hour. Let's check back in with him now again. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Duncan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Can you tell us if there have been any developments? You were telling us about a storm that is supposed to be heading again into the area. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, well, thankfully, it's not going to be anywhere near what just blew through there. No question about that. Again, we are talking about a system that's going to be tracking in to the Maritimes tonight and then heading into Newfoundland for Sunday night. So another solid day of snow clearing weather for tomorrow, Duncan. That's the key, is we're going to get all of Sunday in as well, where crews are going to be able to get a lot done tomorrow. It won't be quite as brisk and cold. I mean, wind chills today across Newfoundland are in the -20. So as you're battling all that snow, the wind is just making it so much more difficult to do so. Tomorrow, a much more tolerable, lighter wind, temperatures in the mid-single digits, so par for the course this time of year. And then that next system will roll in for Sunday night. And unfortunately for the Avalon, it's looking like a solid 10 to as much as 15 centimeters of snow. That's a cakewalk on any normal day. That's a Wednesday in St. John's and across the Avalon Peninsula. But, any snow on top of what has fallen, and again, as you've been talking about, 70 to 90 centimeters across St. John's and the Northeast Avalon, any snow on top of that is not going to be welcomed at all. It does look like it will mix over to a little bit of drizzle for St. John's, not in a typical St. John's fashion. A lot of the systems that come through there do change to a little bit of rain just to make it cement-like to shovel, St. John's cement. But it looks like this one will only get a little bit of a shower drizzle on top, so not too much. And then for the southern parts of the Avalon, though, may see a little bit more in the way of rain there. Don't really have any snowfall amounts from this last storm from the southern Avalon, but it looks like a solid 10 centimeters there, followed by some rain. For the Burin, Clarenville, Bonavista, those areas just west of the Avalon, it looks like there is a better potential there of up to 20 centimeters of snow with this next system. Again, this would be no big deal if it was any other situation, but on top of all that snow that's fallen, no snow will be welcomed coming in there anytime soon until things are really cleared out. And some of that snow that just fell has a chance to melt.
And Ryan, I mean, we've been hearing from our callers from Newfoundland all throughout the show that they never seen anything quite like this storm, not quite like this in terms of the blizzard and just the amount of snow which fell over that 24-hour period there. I mean, we seem to be covering an increasing number of extreme weather events. You may have just heard the last caller talk about his concern about climate change and the concern about climate change in a place like Iceland. I have to ask you, as a meteorologist, I mean, what's it like, and is it possible to link these individual weather events and link them to man-made climate change?
Well, I think any climate experts will tell you themselves that, no individual storm can be linked to climate change. But certainly I've, read more than a few studies and read countless articles from scientists who have a lot more expertise in this area than I do that study these storms and study climate change that say, that these types of storms, these, top of the scale storms are what we're going to continue to see more of. These storms that are unprecedented, that are historic, that are ones that say, that make you say, I haven't seen anything like this. And for Newfoundlanders to say that they haven't seen anything like this, that really says something. I mean, you're talking about, one of, if not the stormiest place in Canada. Every system that comes across North America pretty much exits through that province. And so when you're hearing, Newfoundlanders say that, they haven't seen anything like this, that really speaks to how intense this storm was, the longevity of it, the wind and the snow combination. It's definitely one for the record books. And so I think the fact that, the experts in this field say we're going to be seeing more of these, as I said, top of scale storms, these ones that, really break records and cause damage. That's certainly troubling.
Ryan, thank you. I'm glad you could check back in with us and give us the latest update on the storm and give us that broader perspective as well. You probably deserve some rest after all the work you've been doing, but thank you for keeping us filled in.
My pleasure, and I'll do a little tee up to let Newfoundlanders and Labradorians know that I'm actually going to be doing Atlantic tonight. Supper hour show there, 7:30 on TV with another update on that system coming in, so they can check out the latest forecast then.
Appreciate that. Ryan, you take care.
Thank you, sir.
Ryan Snodden is a CBC meteorologist based in Halifax. You're listening to Cross Country Checkup on CBC Radio 1. I'm Duncan McHugh. Call us at 1-888-416-8333. That's 1-888-416-8333. If you have Twitter or Facebook, I'd urge you to go check out our website, CBC Cross Country Checkup, because our digital producer, Jason Vermesh, is going to post, I believe, a video of a fellow who is snowboarding in downtown St. John's, I think it is. And you know what? We actually have him on the line. Matt Wells, we've reached him. Hi, Matt. Welcome to Checkup.
Thanks, Duncan. How are you?
I'm doing well. How was the snowboarding?
Pleasant, I would say. Yeah, it was. I had the streets all to myself.
So tell me about it. What made you think to get out the snowboard in St. John's?
Well, I mean, I saw an opportunity there. There was a whole lot of snow, no vehicles allowed. It was probably ill-advised for me to go out and do it myself, but definitely worth it in the end, I would say.
Yeah. So where for those who don't know, you were on Water Street, is that right? So describe your ride for us.
Well, Water Street, I mean, as you can probably take from the name, is down on the water. So, I mean, Water Street is very flat. You're not going to be able to snowboard or anything else down that. So, but ultimately, the downtown of St. John's is, I mean, a very steep side of the hill. So you can kind of more or less pick your spot depending on how steep you want the street to be. I was on Prescott. That's where I'm living. And so I walked out the front door, strapped on the snowboard, and then I proceeded on down Prescott over Duckworth. And on down to Water Street.
It was a decent ride, was it?
It was surprising actually because there was so much snow. It was actually difficult to get any speed up. It was difficult to go fast or pick up any speed because the snow was so deep.
Where do you typically do your skiing and snowboarding?
Well, I'm originally from the west coast of Newfoundland. I actually only just relocated here to St. John's a couple of months ago. So the east coast, the Avalanche Peninsula, this St. John's area doesn't have the reputation as the western side of the island. This sort of a snowfall might be something more characteristic of the other side of the island. So this was definitely a pleasant surprise. But normally it's the winter wonderland here in Newfoundland is usually the west coast of the island with Marble Mountain over there.
And so a last question for you. I mean, you just heard Ryan Snodden, our meteorologist, describe using an awful lot of superlatives when he was describing this storm. What about you? Have you seen anything like it before?
In terms of what came in the time window that it was, no, I don't think I've seen anything like this in Newfoundland. Probably the closest thing I would compare it to would have been White Juan. I remember in Halifax when I was there for university years ago. And I remember at that time snowboarding down Queen Street at the time in the south end of Halifax at that time.
Boy, okay. Well, thank you. I enjoy the snowboarding. I think our digital producer Jason Vermesh will share that video. It sounds like you're doing pretty well with a couple thousand shares there so far.
All right, thanks, Duncan.
You take care, Matt. Charlie Rose Redstone offered these suggestions to us via email for those who are getting ready for storms. We went about 4 days without power at the beginning of January here in Cherryville, British Columbia. Just some advice for those worried about that happening. Fill your bathtub with water, so if power goes out, you still have water for things like toilets. We heard that from another caller. Good advice. You can put snow in the drawers of your refrigerator to keep it cool. The refrigerator cool, that is. Put blankets on your chest freezers and snow in them. Also, what we found out was that we could keep our Wi-Fi going, phones charged, and a lamp with an LED bulb plugged into our portable car battery charger. And Christmas lights work as extension cords in a pinch. Good advice, Charlie, for all of those. That was in BC, the folks who were going through that. Blizzards, cold snaps, ice storms. Canada is, of course, home to volatile winter weather. That's not breaking news, but this week we've had a blast of snow in BC and extreme cold warnings, which are sweeping all of Alberta. It is super cold in Alberta right now. To make sense of these wild swings, we're joined by Dave Phillips. He's Environment Canada's senior climatologist, and we've reached him in Barrie, Ontario. Hello.
Good afternoon, Duncan.
I wonder, Dave, what's your take on this week's weather right across the country?
Well, even today's weather, Duncan, I mean, we have every province and every territory in Canada. There's a special weather statement, a weather warning, a weather watch out, and are just a variety of conditions, extreme cold and wind and freezing rain and winter storms and blizzards and storm surge. I mean, it's almost a buffet of winter weather misery that continues today. It's been a wild week, wicked weather from coast to coast, and here in central Canada, Ontario, going through a blizzard out my window here. I mean, not nearly like
no, it's
St.
not as
John's.
bad as St. John's here in Ontario. But I mean, the record snowfall in Victoria, blizzard in St. John's. Can you give us a sense of why this is all happening at the same time?
Well, hey, it's Canada. It's winter. It's the middle of winter. I mean, we are the second coldest country in the world next to Russia. We are the snowiest country in the world. We built our reputation based on being cold and snowy. It continues. It's always been, and probably will continue to be. It is just the very nature of what conditions are like. And sometimes, Duncan, you can go from Tuktoyaktuk to Toronto, and you get the same. You're really into the same air mass. When that Arctic air spills down across the country, it doesn't moderate. That snow and ice on the surface doesn't warm it up. It arrives just as cold in the south as it left in the north. And then you add the strong winds in the south, and you add that wind chill to it. It can be quite a bit of misery. And we saw, of course, in British Columbia, that cold air filled all the nooks and crannies of the mountains. It's like molasses. It's thick and dense. You can't kick it out. And then you get these Pacific systems arriving with lots of moisture, and it turns the what normally would be rain into the white stuff. So really, nobody's been left out of the cold. We're all been affected by this. This is a kind of a snapshot of what kind of the depth of the middle of the dead of winter is in Canada.
Well, but I wonder, we've had some callers who are saying this is the new normal, these kinds of extreme weather events, and I wonder if you could give us a sense as a climatologist. I mean, how much is climate change playing a factor here in these snowstorms and freezing temperatures?
Well, I think, Duncan, it's important not to make assumptions about climate change globally based on your weather out your window, what's happening in your neighborhood, in your backyard. And, people, I've heard it said, bring it on when you have these kinds of bouts of nasty winter weather. It doesn't mean that global warming has stopped or reversed or gone backwards or that the President of the United States is right in his scientific thoughts. No, I mean, one is weather and the other is climate. Weather is what you see when you look out the window. Climate is something that occurs over years, decades, and centuries. Now, it's true, if you change the weather, then of course the climate will change, because really the climate is the statistics of weather. I think what often surprises people is when they hear climatologists say that in bouts of nasty weather like this could very well be related to climate change or to global warming, and it just seems counterintuitive to say that, wow, we're seeing this bitter cold out west and this heavy snow. Is this because the world has warmed up? And when we talk about climate change, Duncan, we're often talking not just about the fact that the extremes are more extreme. We talk also about the variability, the wild swings in the weather. And I think that's one of the characteristics of our changing climate that is very worrisome. We know that it can often make storms more powerful. It doesn't change the weather in the sense that we're seeing, tornadoes in January or sandstorms in October. No, it's not that. It just means that the same old weather is ramped up. It's more intense. It's got more energy associated with it. And the other thing that we're seeing is this wild swings, this variability. I've had farmers say to me this past growing season, I could have bought drought insurance and flood insurance in the same growing season. Not 50 years apart, but in the same growing season. We saw on the prairies some of the driest spring on record, followed by the wettest fall on record. And I think that's very indicative of a changing world.
And so, I mean, I wonder, with those kinds of wild swings, that must be kind of throwing the predictions of the Farmer's Almanac out the window, basically. So can you give us a sense of what's in store for the rest of the winter, just in general for the country?
Well, I mean, we do a better job describing what we've had than what we're going to get.
Sure, yeah, you do.
Hey, I look at the next month. I look at the month of February across the country. And, we see our map is showing cooler than normal in eastern Canada, Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes. We're showing normal and warmer than normal conditions out west. But, hey, the problem is, Duncan, that doesn't say every day, every week coming in through late January into February. It means the flavor or the personality come at the end of February. If it turns out to be colder than normal in Montreal and Ottawa, then, hey, we got one right. If it tends to be milder than normal in British Columbia or the next month or so, hey, we scored well. But it doesn't mean that we're going to see no more winter weather out west and too much here in the east. We're at a kind of a magic point right now. It's what I call the dead of winter. And across the country last week and this week coming up in eastern Canada, last week in western Canada, it's the halfway point where we can honestly say, if you're not a big fan of winter, then, Duncan, you can say there's more winter behind us than ahead of us. It's saying nothing about what's coming. It just gives you a little bit more hope that we've crossed that line to say that, hey,
we're over the hump. We're over the hump.
Upswing.
Dave, thank you. Always good to talk with you. Thanks very much for filling us in.
You're so welcome, Duncan. Bye-bye now.
Dave Phillips is Environment Canada's senior climatologist, and we reached him in Barrie, Ontario. You're listening to a special edition of Cross Country Checkup. I'm Duncan McHugh. Of course, we're covering that record-smashing blizzard that hit Newfoundland and Labrador last night. They are digging out today, and we're trying to give you the latest. But also, we want to talk to Canadians about the weather that they're seeing in their part of the country. Stephanie Muckenheim is watching on our Facebook Live and said this: I live about 26 kilometers outside of Whitehorse, and it has been below minus 40 for a week and below minus 30 for 2 weeks. I've been housebound all week because of my truck wouldn't start. Something to be said for a stocked pantry and freezer. I have a wood stove, propane cook stove, and water tank in my basement, so I'm warm and able to cook. Lots of people are out and about, and for many, it's just business as usual. Even if it is minus 40 out, Yukoners are a tough lot. You sure are. Know some Yukoners, and yeah, it gets cold out there. So hang in there and stay warm. With over 76 centimeters of snow hunkering down in a snowstorm can let your mind wander. Our next guest spent this morning shoveling a tunnel path out to the street, but last night he took to writing a poem to pass the time. Adam Meyer is a PhD student at Memorial University studying ecology, and he just moved to St. John's 2 weeks ago, and he joins me on the line from there. Hello.
Well, hi there.
Adam, you just moved. Were you expecting a storm like this?
It doesn't sound like anyone was expecting a storm quite like this. Yeah, I mean, everyone told me the weather's going to be, different from Toronto, of course. But you know what? I think it's good to get a big one out of the way right off the bat. Because this is sort of the new yardstick by which all weather will be judged.
And so, how have you been coping with this one?
You know what? Pretty good. I got the good socks on this weekend. I've got some hot apple cider now, so I'm having a good weekend. I've been super impressed by the people who have been working to keep the power on, and so I think I'm pretty comfortable, all things considering.
I understand you wrote a poem last night. What inspired you to do that?
Well, when the power goes out and there's not a whole lot to do, right? It's either that or grade lab reports. So, yeah, it was just sitting around listening to the storm and seemed like a good idea to just jot some ideas down, and ended up being a poem.
So can you share it with us on air?
Sure. I moved to St. John's just in time for the greatest winter storm in a generation. Now I stand half buried in a cold Sahara, watching streetlights flicker meekly like tea candles on the verge of being snuffed by the greatest winter storm in a generation. My house rocks and surges like a wooden ship so that when I close my eyes, I see icy cliffs too close, disappear under the frigid surf thrown around by the greatest winter storm in a generation. When the power finally fails, the world goes not black, but purple. And from the otherworldly shade, it's obvious St. John's is a sibling of Pluto, an icy frontier at the edge of system space, in orbit, but made distinct from the distance and cold as a dwarf planet by the greatest winter storm in a generation. The air around the city feels sick, as if decades of jet fuel and international trade routes have concocted a nasty bug to be slowly purged with each retching gust that spews a brake-locking, street-clogging mess, culminating in the greatest winter storm in a generation. I moved to St. John's in time to witness its cold burial, but tomorrow I'll wake and find life in the morning after the greatest winter storm in a generation.
Very nice. Very evocative. Have you written something like that before?
A little bit. I mean, I write songs from time to time, and I was actually in Newfoundland this summer for a few weeks doing some field work, and I wrote another one then. So it seems a creative place.
Well, thank you very much for sharing it. And you know what? If a storm inspires good art, then it's that's a good thing, right?
Well, yeah, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you. You take care.
You too.
Adam Meyer is a PhD student at Memorial University in St. John's. Julia Coombs in Morinville, Alberta shared this. Wait times for car boosts and tows are anywhere from 48 to 72 hours. Of course, Alberta is getting hit by just a huge cold snap right now. It's really cold there. Julia's filling us in on that. Our Husky Cross puppy will go out to do her business and cry to come in. Our Shih Tzu Cross won't go out at all. But we still have power, heat, and the snow is not too deep, can't complain. Burr. And we are getting our senior producer Richard Goddard just shared with me that there has been a news update. A request has been made to the Government of Canada for assistance, including mobilizing the Canadian Armed Forces to provide relief to areas of Newfoundland and Labrador affected by severe winter weather. So we were talking with the Premier earlier on in the program. That request had not been made, but apparently even within the past hour or so, it has been now. So there has been a request for the Canadian Armed Forces to come in. We're going to try to squeeze a couple more callers in at the end of the show here. Rhonda Kenny is on the line. She is the director for the Red Cross in Newfoundland, and she's joining us from Paradise, Newfoundland. Hi, Rhonda. Welcome to Checkup.
Thank you, Duncan. Good afternoon.
Can you tell us how folks are faring from the perspective of the Red Cross?
Yeah, so certainly, leading up to the storm, the Canadian Red Cross was very actively engaged with our government partners, municipalities, regarding the promotion of preparedness, emergency preparedness, and really pushing out the message of individuals, families, communities being prepared in the event of this big blizzard.
Can you give, I know that there's often a lot of, during the lulls and the downtime, there's a lot of hand wringing amongst emergency preparedness officials that folks just don't take things seriously until an emergency hits. Can you give us some advice on how to prepare and weather a winter storm?
Yeah, and I certainly think with the weather advisories coming out so far ahead of the storm that people were really taking heed and really paying attention to the importance of ensuring that they're individually and their family was prepared for this one. So, ensuring that they had, adequate drinking water, non-perishable food items, flashlights, those sorts of things in the event that they could not, access them and they had to stay at home. So, we certainly believe that a lot of these messages were being heard.
And we had a listener give some just real practical tips in terms of filling up your tub with water, that kind of thing. Any other kind of practical tips that you could give to people who may find themselves in the middle of a storm right now?
Yeah, so it's important, right now, there's still like weather advisory or certainly travel advisory in effect. There's still, declared state of emergencies in a number of the municipalities. What they're really, really emphasizing is really following the advice of the public authorities at this point, because those states of emergencies are still in effect. So people should not be attempting to get on the road and drive and really stay at home until the roadways can be cleared.
And we got a tweet. We had a fellow on earlier who there's a video of him snowboarding down the street, which we had him on earlier. He said he just wanted to have some fun out there. We got a response from Aaron Whitney, who's watching on our Facebook Live, and said, "Hate to be a buzzkill, but first responders really don't need to be taking thrill seekers to the hospital right now. Please be careful." So I guess you would echo that, eh, Rhonda?
Absolutely, yeah. Even in my neighborhood, there's a number of the neighbors who certainly have their driveways cleared, but it's going to be a while before those roads are clear. So I saw people walking back and forth with their snowshoes on, close to the side of the road, but certainly encouraging people not to go on the road because it's not safe, and a lot of the roadways still aren't cleared. So
no, and you're going to be digging out for a while there, it sounds like, in Newfoundland. Rhonda, thank you very much for giving us an update from the Red Cross. You're my last caller today.
Okay, thank you, Duncan.
And that is it for this special Saturday edition of Cross Country Checkup. Thank you to everyone who called today. We're going to be back again tomorrow. Normally we're on Sundays, and we are going to be back again tomorrow. Our question is, what's your reaction to Harry and Meghan's move to Canada? But this was a Saturday edition. We figured it was warranted today. If you missed part of the program, you can listen again anytime online. Go to our website, cbc.ca/checkup. Hey, if you want quick and easy access to CBC News and programming, wherever you go, download the CBC Listen app on your phone. You can get it on Google Play or the App Store. Email us, checkup@cbc.ca, on Twitter and Facebook. Find us by searching for Checkup CBC. And if you're turning on the radio now and wondering what the heck is Checkup doing on a Saturday, we will be back again tomorrow on Sunday at our normal time. Our question, what's your reaction to Harry and Meghan's move to Canada? Thank you to everyone who helped this week, the small but mighty team who came on very short notice Charles Mulgat, Abby Plenner, and Sharoz Rofe. Technical production and editing, Austin Pomeroy. Cross Country Checkup was produced this week by Susan McReynolds, Mary Newman, Levi Garber, Ashley Fraser, and Kate Cornick. Digital producer is Jason Fermesh, and our senior producer is Richard Goddard. Jimmy Gwitch. Thanks for listening. Take care out there. Be safe. I'm Duncan McHugh. Bye for now.